Hello, everybody. This is Gynarchic Awakening here. It's going to be part three of the stuff about Gynarchists and what's getting in their way of core dating. This is going to have points that are related, uh, I want to say almost tangentially to the other ones. Like, if you've ever seen a tangent line, it's like right there. Like, it's so close that it should really just be considered as like a subset of the other point, but I do think it matters to explain it and have a discussion. So, one of the things that gets in the way, and this does relate to the lack of commitment, if someone can't even follow through on a commitment to something that's like an online project or an art project, or something as simple as keeping up with a friendship or uh, a peer, if you can't even keep up a direct correspondence with another person, right? Then how can you expect, or why would you expect that person to want to live next to you? So that is another kind of thing that's sort of like hiding off in the corner over there that I don't see a lot of, and I know I'm saying this a lot, but I swear this is true. This conversation almost never comes up. Uh, but if somebody is not serious in their commitments, via any kind of interactions, if they're not trying to make things happen, then why would you want to live next to that person? You have to respect the individual and feel like you have a connection with them. If you feel that that connection is tenuous at best, I really don't see the logic in wanting to move next to that individual, even if they say they identify as a gynarchist. Uh, because again, friendships, connections, these are supposed to enrich our lives, not take away from it, right? And people already have their own communities. People have friends and family they've connected with. There's going to be one of two options. And this is the next problem, which is how, like the how of how to organize and establish the an in-person Gynarchic community, or just a community of any kind involving people who are into FLR, femdom, whatever. The how is really important. I've had this conversation with individuals in the community, uh, yeah, that I met on X and Facebook, and the how is really important because who's going to uproot their lives for the other person? Like, do you have any idea? Like that, I mean, that's asking a lot of another human being. I have my own dreams and personal goals, but Um, I am not devoid of common sense here. And I think that when we talk about communities, we do have to consider the possibility that maybe what we're personally offering is not better than what their community has to offer at the moment. For example, does their community have better job opportunities? Were they born there? Were they raised there? Or did they move there? And it's really, I think, almost in a way insulting to go up to somebody and say, well, just because of a cause, you need to uproot your entire life. You need to say goodbye to your friends and your family and your support system because we need to get this thing going. I mean, that is just like if you say that the wrong way, even the thought itself can be insulting. So, beyond the fact that you have to demonstrate that what they're going to be getting is greater than what they're being given already by their community, you have to show that your community is going to be better than theirs. And how can you do that when you don't even know how it's going to develop or change? You're not really sure about these things. So if people are, and this is the other part of the problem, uprooting doesn't just come at an emotional cost. It can come at a financial, and does come at financial costs. And these costs can be pretty severe. So asking somebody to change their potentially their financial situation and their community situation because of a cause doesn't seem to be a very compelling reason, now does it? And I think that this is where, if you ask somebody directly what an action plan is, this is where most human beings, I feel, they're either going to avoid the subject with like a 100-foot pole, or they're going to talk about it in the abstract and keep it in the abstract. Because when you actually discuss the details of it, it makes it more unlikely, because the vast majority of gynarchists I know about In fact, all of them that I know about are not super wealthy people that can just make anything happen if they want to. I've had conversations with other Gynarchists about like rich benefactors and stuff. I'm not personally comfortable with the idea. I don't like the idea of somebody having that much power and control over other people and whether or not they'll be involved in a community. So I do think that plays that's a huge like thing that is preventing people from coordinating their efforts. In other words, just the way the system is set up to where people can't just freely relocate whenever they want. You have a tough economy, you have a tough life, you've built a life for yourself. Like just severing those connections and then moving to another location is not something you should expect every human being to be able to do. And so I think, at least definitely from if you take into account the way the system is constructed, the way people adapt to the current system, I think that it is very unrealistic to expect either of them. Now, I could do it, but I'm a special case. Um, it really is a question of who's willing to do what. So, let's say you have two Gynarchists that are geographically isolated. One of them lives in the state of let's just use my state, California. Another lives in Montana. Who's going to uproot to be closer to who? Like, who's going to do it? Who's going to make that choice so that they can live closer to the other Gynarchist? And I think that kind of question, although that sounds cruel and harsh, these are the kinds of questions you're going to have to ask when you are talking about the creation of an in-person guided community. This is intentionally created. This isn't some kind of accident that happens by chance. You are deliberately doing this stuff. And I personally find, and I will mention this when I talk about how to coordinate, that I don't think that this is a tenable means to achieve a community. I don't think that this is a good idea. I think that it's unrealistic. I truly believe that when you are engaging in this thought process, you have to think about that person's personal disposition. You have to consider their thoughts and feelings. These are human beings. These are not just followers to a cause. That is not, in my opinion, acceptable to reduce people to these terms and to expect them to just go along with it, because no matter what they say or feel, their actions are going to tell the story. And I think that is definitely one of the biggest problems. Actually, I wish I would have mentioned at the beginning, but the financial problems, how to relocate, like the other issues in relocating, that right there is a huge fucking problem. Now, obviously, there's going to be no gated communities at first because no one is rich enough to buy a fucking gated community at first. But when we move beyond that, now we're going to leave that point behind. There are definitely some other things that can prevent the coordination. And one of them is actually this, and it might seem kind of counterintuitive, but it's actually the online community itself that could, in its own way, act as this kind of barrier from the coordination. In other words, if people are already talking with each other and they're already getting their like quote daily supply of Gynarchy talks or whatever, or whenever they feel like they need to talk about them, interact with somebody. Well, if you're talking and interacting with somebody in that way on the internet, is like what exactly can you do in person as a community? I mean, obviously there are things you can do that you can't do on the internet, but is it necessary to fulfill your social and emotional needs? In other words, at least in relation to Gynarchic community. So if you're already talking with 5 Gynarchists or 6 Gynarchists on the internet or whatever, and just talking with them makes you feel whole and complete and not alone and validated, well, if you're already getting those kinds of social and emotional needs fulfilled, is moving towards them is it really going to be worth it if you're already getting enough out of it? And I get the feeling that there are some Gynarchists who are perfectly comfortable just talking to other human beings, just conversing with them on the internet. or in chats or whatever. And then when they get that need fulfilled or that deep desire or whatever, that's it. MoveOn.org until you need to talk to them again. I always get the feeling that when it comes to the online versus the offline community, like one of the distinguishing features is that in your in-person community, um, it can actually be in some ways more isolating than being online. Because when you're online, you don't necessarily have the same fears and concerns about approaching people in your in-person community with certain thoughts or ideas. If you approach the wrong person in your in-person community, you could get in serious trouble. Um, Especially if that individual has beliefs that are directly contrary to your own and they happen to be a hostile element in society and they're just looking for a reason to go after somebody like you. So I think there is uh, that kind of factor at play here within the equation, so to speak, where you're trying to find out, okay, you're kind of weighing what is better, an online community or an offline community. And one of the advantages of the online community is at least the illusion of anonymity if the other person's not a hacker or anything. Also, the distance, kind of this sense of separation that it can provide from danger. Whereas every time you talk about these things with a person in public, you are taking a risk. I know that whenever I did my Gynarchy challenge thing, I was taking risks. Of course, that was also part of research. I was trying to figure some things out, trying to learn about my local population and how much they knew about that lexicon. That doesn't change it though. So I think that as long as we have, I think as long as we are not, I think as long as we are satisfied with the online community, I don't really know if people will ever gravitate towards the offline because a lot of people, Gynarchists, talk about, you know, more women being in businesses, getting more women elected to public office. A lot of their solutions, a lot of the things they're supporting and gunning for, have nothing to do with their local community. And this is going to lead me to ask a question. Is your online community, are you satisfied with the online Gynarchy community that you interact with, that you're communicating with right now? Or is it not enough? Do you need the in-person Gynarchy community? Because I get the feeling that people not everybody, I'm certainly not, but I think a lot of people are just comfortable having text-to-text interactions or maybe some Discord chats or something, or maybe they get on Skype or whatever. I feel like these are just enough for them, and then that's it. They believe that getting to their ultimate goal means thinking bigger or being bigger. I don't think that many people think in the small to the large. I think, at least not in the sense of actually being there for the other person. Now, there are ways around this. There are ways to make this more practical, more logical. And I will get into ways that you can coordinate and organize those communities better. But I certainly believe that I don't think it's economically feasible or even logical or reasonable to take, like, say, 20 or 30 Gynarchists from all the different states and then try to pull them into one state. I don't think that's a reasonable. I don't think it's reasonable to expect them all to go along with it. And I would actually think that the opposite would happen, that they would find every reason in the book to politely turn you down. Some of them may be outright hostile towards you. I don't think that's a good idea, and I don't think that's the path forward to an in-person community. I think there are other ways of establishing them. They're going to be rooted more, and it's going to require a lot of on-the-ground work for a coordinator, a community coordinator, which I will talk about. But I don't think that's I don't think that's something we should be throwing our weight behind, because it's if it hadn't worked in the past few decades, why would it suddenly work now? I think people are too rooted in their personal lives. I think people are getting what they need right now, and they don't want that. That's my personal feeling in general.